Alastair. This is a wee catch-up from our chat 3 years ago. During it we covered a lot of issues ranging from community empowerment, town centre plan, bypass, infrastructure issues, jobs, NICE, nurture plan, community councils, common good fund, fair share, etc, etc. Has there been any progress on any of these issues we talked about then? And are you still as optimistic and enthusiastic as you were 3 years ago?
Well, yes, I'm still as optimistic and enthusiastic as I was 3 years ago. And yes, there has been, I think, quite significant progress, particularly around the Team Hamish and the links and joined up working between ourselves and the council. And I know it's been hard work and I know it's taken a lot of time and effort, but I think we're getting there and we're starting to see a much better and much more adult relationship between the various different groups in there and the council. And what we know for sure is we've all got to work together, and it's not going to work unless we do all work together. So we really have to keep maturing our relationships and trying to get into a much more happier place around deciding what we want to do and what we don't want to do. So yes, it's been hard work, and yes, it's taken an awful lot of time and effort, but quite significantly there's been progress.
How's the progress gone on community empowerment?
Well, I think we had a really good meeting with Donna Manson, which is now...
And Donna Manson is the
new chief executive of Highland Council. And she came to Nairn and quite openly said that things had to be much better in the relationship between the council and the people and the groups in Nairn. And since then, we've spent a lot of time and effort. She's reorganised her structure to give us a senior local person who's Kate Lackey, who's the executive chief officer, deputy executive chief officer. But she has a responsibility for coming to Nairn on a regular basis now and being the link between Nairn and Donna and the council. And we're at the start of that, but it appears that we're going to have much better discussions and conversations than we've had in the past.
Is the Nurture Committee still going?
Yes, we've got the Nurture Committee, but one of the things that are very obvious over some of the recent events is that so much of that is done in private behind closed doors, and we really don't know what's going on.
This is made up of the four
councillors and the local manager, and we've got Willie Munro now as our local manager, and again we seem to be getting much more sensible discussions with him about what's going on and how to move forward.
And how about the town centre? What's actually been happening there?
The town centre to me is just sums up the two approaches. We either go down this road of people having meetings behind closed doors and coming up with a plan which is totally contrary to the town centre plan, or we go back to what we all think is the right way of working, which was ridings were paid by the Scottish Government to do the town centre charade. That was very well attended. It was very broad support from the people in Nairn for what was proposed. Scott Garner was the planner, wrote it up. It was then approved as supplementary guidance. So we have a town centre plan which we believe is sensible. It addresses the problems that Nairn's got, the high streets and how we make it more successful. Also from the ridings work, they approached NICE to say that Nairn needed a business improvement district, which is one of the government ways of trying to improve the business areas. And NICE with Michael Green, who was then a councillor, went all over Scotland with Michael Boylan, who was the manager of the co-op from the north of Scotland, and the result of that is we've now got a bid. So we're building capacity. It's a real big problem for Nairn is how you build capacity and how you make things happen. And I think what we're now at is trying to get a project manager sort of person in so that we do project 1, project 2, project 3, and that ties in nicely with what's happening in the links, but it also would tie in very nicely with what we would like to see in the town centre.
How is bid going? That was set up last year, wasn't it?
Yes, the bid has now got a bid manager, and they're at the present moment two main things. They're building events, and we've already had a series of events, which I think have been very successful, and again, that's good for Nairn's image and brings in more tourists. And also they're working really hard now on a branding for Nairn to try and be able to advertise in a much more efficient and successful way to bring more tourists to Nairn. Because the whole thing, certainly in my opinion at the present moment, is we've moved away from just saying we need housing to saying what we need is jobs, and good jobs, and less travel and a more sustainable future. And I think that's a very much more exciting prospect for Nairn. I think that fits much better with what we would like to see Nairn be.
With the bid, it's a more permanent thing now, isn't it? That there's somebody doing that all the time rather than somebody dipping in and then going away again.
The beauty of the bid is that for 5 years, the businesses who are eligible to pay rates have to pay into the bid. So the bid has got a guaranteed income stream for 5 years, and that income stream can be used, as you say, to develop capacity to employ people, to make sure that people fully understand really the potential of Nairn and how we can improve, as I say, the jobs, the income. And that's win-win-win for everybody. The more money that we circulate through Nairn, the better it is for the people who have shops, who have restaurants, who have businesses. More employment means less travel, it means better jobs, it means more people can live and work in Nairn. And it also lets us start to address the infrastructure problems that we've got.
In the town centre at the moment, the town centre plan, there's a few controversial proposals going on, things like parking charges and the possible demolition of the social work building. How is that going to impact on the town?
Well, that to me is the crunch. This is where we're at this crossroads now. We either do planning properly, so that we actually follow the approved plan, and that plan seems to be consistent with the Highland-wide planning, the Murray Firth Local Development Plan, and the supplementary guidance, which is the town centre plan. So we have a structure and a process which seems to me absolutely correct, with broad popular support, and then we get these arbitrary decisions, which are quite often driven by, we've got a pocket of money or a package of money, and therefore we're going to do it. But it's not in Nairn's best interest, and that takes us into this whole question of what is in the common good and how to make best use of common good assets. And that to me is at the centre of this whole argument around what's going to happen in the town centre, because as Nairn is bypassed, it's absolutely essential that people do come into the town centre, think it's attractive, park and stay and spend money. That seems to me to be the only sensible way forward. So anything that's contrary to that just doesn't make any sense.
With regards to the bypass, do you think it's going to happen?
Well, we know we have this ongoing tension now between the Scottish Government, which is SNP, and the Greens who are supporting them. There is absolutely no doubt in anybody's mind that Nairn needs to be bypassed. It's an environmental risk, it's a health risk, it's obviously using up a vast amount of people's time stuck in traffic jams and red lights in Nairn, so Nairn needs a bypass. Whether it's 2 lanes or 1 lane, I think will be a financial argument, but above all we need a bypass now. And yes, I think it will happen, it has to be.
With the bypass, there's a danger that the very nature of a bypass is it passes by the town, that Nairn could end up just being a completely dormitory town of Inverness. And again, that's an effect that's got to be looked at, the potential impact in the future of the town and people not coming.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think this is exactly the argument we're in now, that we become a dormitory town of Inverness, and Joan did some figures, something like 100,000 miles a day of people commuting to jobs in Inverness or Forres or Elgin. It's madness. So what we need is more good jobs in there, and I think we should really concentrate on that. And to answer the question about the bypass, if people are driving past, there has got to be something to bring them into the centre of there, and they've got to want to come here, which goes back to the whole branding, infrastructure, making best use of our wonderful natural resources, because we have these natural resources and we're not selling them properly.
With regards to going back to the town centre plan, the places like the harbour, the links, Viewfield, there was various proposals for those. How are those?
Well,
can,
the links is very positive. We can start on the really good news is that what I'll call the Team Hamish splash pad will be starting construction at the end of March, and it will be ready for the summer holidays, and that will be a massive improvement on the old pool, which has served its time and needed repairs. But that is kind of project one, and to go back to this idea, I think where we're at now is that Nairn is seen to be a very good place to invest in. Every outside person, consultant, Rydens, Marion Francis, all the people that we've had in, Nick Wright, who did the links plan for the Highland Council, all see the massive potential for improving the links, having more tourists, staying longer and spending more.
The harbour, that was regarded as an extension to the town centre. Have there been any developments on the harbour?
Well, the harbour has had, again, the fantastic potential. We must put the potential in. The harbour could be a wonderful site for sailing, canoeing, kayaking, all kind of water sports. And it ties nicely into this whole infrastructure first policy that the Scottish Government is following. There obviously needs to be money spent in the harbour. There needs to be a flood risk assessment, and we need to sort out the sewage. But the harbour as such seems to me another wonderful asset that we have that we need to make sure we use properly. That link between the town centre, the harbour, the links, Viewfield, is a natural tourist attraction if we manage to get the right infrastructure there.
Now Viewfield, that's an interesting development because the common goods, which we'll come to later, that was discovered that Viewfield is actually part of the common goods assets.
Yes, I mean the other very positive thing is for years we've been arguing with Highland Council about the common good and the common good assets. They have done this very properly. We now have the best common good asset register we've had for probably 30 or 40 years. It's very interesting when you look back how well the previous councils and councillors looked after the common good asset. And this is over 400 years. I find this very difficult to understand that 400 years ago Nairn would be relatively poor compared to now, and yet it managed to have all these common good lands and common good assets. So credit where credit is due. The council have done a really good job around getting this asset list up to date. I think again it's shown a great benefit having locals who really know and understand and are willing to put the work in. So we're sitting on an asset now. If you start at the river, you come down to the Maggot, you've got the Dunbar Golf Course, you've got Parkdean, you've got the Links, and you've got Sandown, are all in the common good. And Viewfield in particular has suffered from planning blight because nobody would do up the building. We now know who owns the building, and that opens the door to really quite exciting developments at Viewfield in terms of both a museum, potentially an art gallery, and potentially the library which is there. So it's a wonderful asset, and we should be using it to attract people into the town centre.
Because it is quite a big building, isn't it?
It's a beautiful building, and it's again been allowed to fall into a fair amount of disrepair. But there's nothing fundamentally wrong with it, and it could be, I think, very attractively developed and added to as a real asset to Nairn.
Now, on infrastructure issues, things like the you touched just now about the flood prevention, the Fisher Town, and the sewage upgrade. Again, has there been any developments on those?
Well, if you take the flood prevention stuff, I find it quite frightening at a time when we're watching every day how much flooding has happened in England. That the mouth of the Nairn, Fisher Town, is regarded as the highest flood risk in this area, this Highlands and Murray. And they haven't even done the sort of preliminary work. So it's an absolute priority that we get that moved forward. And again, all of these discussions, the whole thing about community empowerment, about place planning, is to allow the locals to prioritise what needs to be done and have a much more responsive system And certainly the flood risk is a massive risk and needs some really clever engineering solutions to solve it. The sewage is, I find, just also quite amazing in that the bathing water quality, after having a series of really good meetings where again the local input was very strong and very knowledgeable, the decision was that the way to avoid bathing water regulations is just not to test when we know there's going to be sewage in the water for 2 or 3 days, rather than addressing the problem of the capacity of the sewage works. And the other big problem, which links nicely back to the flood risk, is that we have a Victorian system where the sewage and the surface water, the road water, goes into the same pipes and it just can't cope.
And again, on the sewage and possible upgrades on the sewage, there's a lot more building work being done out in Loch Loy, so there's a bigger impact on the sewage works.
Yes, I mean, already we've got a massive suds, a drainage pond, which is enormous to try and cope with the water, trying to reduce the amount of water arriving in the sewage works at the same time as the sewage. And we know what's happening on Loch Loy Road. There's 6 to 8 weeks of the road being shut to put in a new sewer. There has to be a much better connection between planning and development and infrastructure, and the government policy is clearly infrastructure first, and we should be asking some really serious questions. As for example, where are the developer contributions from Loch Loy? Somewhere, between £4 and £6 million does not seem to be showing in any account, and that would be an absolute minimum we'd expect to see from the Loch Loy developer contributions. So we're paying a very high price in infrastructure terms and sewage terms and flood risk terms and road traffic terms and pollution terms for the developments we've had, and that is contrary to government policy, and it just, to me, doesn't make any sense at all.
One of the things with the sewage system is we're always told that there's enough capacity, but it's not so much the capacity that's a potential problem, it's the actual, as you said, the Victorian earthworks and all that.
Yeah, my understanding is that sometimes they have to take sewage away in tankers when it's too much, but basically the sewage capacity is the least of the problems. That could easily be corrected and built up, but we've got this historic system which is not now allowed of the surface water and the sewage going into the same pipes, and that overloads the sewage works. So when there's an awful lot of water, the sewage works can't work. And that's the problem with Loch Loy, why they're trying to separate the surface water and put in new sewage pipes. So it can all be solved. It's not that we don't know what the answers are, but it does take considerable sums of money. And that has to be a priority for SEPA, for Scottish Water, for SMH. These are all bodies that at the present moment we are paid and have a statutory duty to deliver these services.
The other main infrastructure issue in the town is the schools, Nairn Academy and the 2 primary schools. What's the situation with them?
Well, again, and people have been going on about this for years, and it goes right back to chaired school councils and all the rest of it. The current thinking is that all 3 school premises in there are poor buildings, and again, can I stress, this has nothing to do with the teaching staff, the pupils, anything else. This is purely about the buildings. The academy has been a poor building since it went up. Rosebank is the old academy and in many ways is not as suitable as a primary school, and Millbank is a very old primary. So we've had at least 2 proposals for new primary schools, one in Achary and one in Loch Loy, which have not been built. We've shut Delmys, we've had all sorts of decisions made, but in terms of fair share and cost per head of population, Nairn is very much at the lower end of the cost per head of population per pupil, and all 3 of these buildings really need a good look at it. And despite repeated promises about Nairn Academy being number 1, there is still no plan for it to be redeveloped. One
of the other things that ties in with the academy is the all-weather pitches. that came up recently, that they're not fit for purpose either, they need to be replaced.
No, and again, that was very good joined up working between the sports club, the council, the academy. We got the all-weather pitches. They have a natural time span, and it's it's just run out. So again, the question's got to be asked is why has Nairn not got all-weather pitches when every other new school in Highland gets 2 or 3 all-weather pitches, just almost as an essential feature. So
another potential infrastructure issue is grass cutting and ground maintenance about the time. There's been a reduction and a change to that over the past 3 years. What impact is that having?
Well, as you know, I'm a very keen gardener and I take a keen interest in what's going on. When I came to Nairn first, we had Hugh Norgate and a professional gardening squad, we had a maintenance squad, we had the capacity to deliver all sorts of things. Nairn used to be a very, very well gardened place, just like forests. You could see good gardeners doing the job. So I think it's absolutely essential that we link this fair share argument. What we're saying is Nairn should get its fair share of gardening and maintenance. And that should be a professional, properly trained gardening squad, maintenance squad. And they should be in a position to make the decisions as to what grows where, when the grass needs cut, how it needs cut, what edges need done, all these sort of things. And some of the issues that come up are very interesting. We might not have to cut all the grass all the time. We could have sort of wild meadows, we could have areas which were environmentally much better. But the fundamental point is we have to get this professional squad, professional cohort right, and then we can add on volunteers. What we cannot do and should not do is expect volunteers to do all these things. Now, whether it's gardening or maintenance or toilets or whatever else, there has to be an essential core of people who know what they're doing, who have the right equipment, who've got the right training, and they set the standard, and then we can add volunteers and all the charities on top of that. And that model works, in my opinion, as we've already said, incredibly well. And we cannot, for example, keep expecting people from, say, Keep Nairn colourful to do all the garden maintenance work. It's just not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. So again, we really need to address these quite fundamental problems about how we make things work. The best value for money tradition is to have really good people who know what they're doing and then add volunteers and extras on top of that.
At the moment, the people doing the gardening, the grass cutting and the ground maintenance, they're very stretched, which is the problem.
Yes, we've moved from a situation where, for example, the cemetery used to be immaculate and people had time to do the cemetery properly, to be done occasionally by subcontractors. I think all we know about gardening is a long-term commitment to standards. And once you slip from that standards, it gets harder and harder to do it. So we need to go back to having that hardcore of proper quality gardening and maintenance people keeping the standards up. We've talked about this many times. The path up to the River Nairn wasn't right. Chrissy Ellen used to say, go and tidy it, and it would be tidied that day. The gardens were immaculate, the flower baskets and the high street were immaculate. It's all part of the image of what Nairn should be.
And again, it shouldn't be relying on volunteers.
It cannot rely on volunteers, Shirley. It's just not going to work. It's not sustainable. What we've seen, and this discussion has just brought it home. When I first came to Nairn, there was all sorts of people employed by Highland Council in Nairn doing all sorts of jobs. I see it in the health side where we should, if we've got a fair share, have a lot more health people. And all of these are good jobs. They're good people, and they would take an interest and a pride in Nairn and the outcomes of their particular bit. And all of it ties nicely together into this place planning model of Nairn being as green and attractive, well run, well maintained, well doctored, well teachered, applies to education, social care, home care, all these jobs we need to make sure we're getting our fair share. I know I seem to be going on about this, but if you look at the fair share argument, we are not getting our fair share of all the services, either from the council or from the health side. And despite the best efforts of the people in Nairn, we cannot keep covering up for that lack of recurrent revenue.
Can you explain what fair share actually is?
Well, fair share, we all pay our taxes now, whether that's income tax or council tax or rates or whatever. That money goes into the Scottish Government or central government or the council. And certainly all the work I'm doing makes me absolutely clear that the least you should expect is your fair share back. Now, I accept that some of that should be weighted, so if you're very rural or you've got a lot of deprivation, you might get a bit more. But for most of Scotland, it should be roughly the same. So, for example, on the bit I probably know most about, the health and social integration, Nairn Healthcare, which is the Nairn and Ardis here, 15,000 patients, fair share should be at absolute minimum of 45 million. The figure I've got back from the Community Planning Partnership and from the Health Board is 12.6 million. Now that's a massive discrepancy that we need to find out what has happened, where is that money, and if it's been spent in other areas of Highland, why are we not getting our fair share? And the other thing that's come out of all these discussions recently is that this should not be, for example, using the common good, if we have a common good income, to offset the council's fair share. The idea is that we get our fair share, and then if we have common good, it comes in on top of that, just the same way as the charitable sector or the voluntary sector would come on top of that. So it's fundamental that people in Nairn and Nairnshire really get their head round asking for a fair share.
Good fund. There's a lot of work been done on that in the last 3 years, as you said earlier, to bring it up to some sort of standard. But isn't there a bit of a conflict of interest with who runs the common good?
I think that's a fundamental question that we're going to address very soon. My understanding, and I've had numerous discussions about this, is it is very difficult for our 4 councillors to act as trustees of the common good. And the common good is very interesting. The common good belongs to all of us. The titles are held by Highland Council, but that's almost just a legal nicety. How they have to behave, how they have to act, is in the common good and making best use of the common good asset. And what we're seeing increasingly is that conflict between them acting as trustees of our common good and doing what as Highland councillors the rest of the council asked them or decided to do. Car parking would be a good example, where it seems to be that we should pay our fair share of car parking, but we cannot and should not use common good land to raise money for Highland Council, because the car parking is a fundraising, it's a money raising scheme. It's got nothing to do with whether it's good for the town or not. It's merely to raise money for the council. So I feel that the councils are becoming very conflicted in this area, and we need to sort this out. So we're looking at setting up a subgroup from Nairn West and Suburban Community Council and Nairn River Community Council to work with the councillors to come up with a group which would be much more focused on acting in Nairn's common good and delivering the best use of that common good asset. And I think we have to address that now. We've put up for years with being told that Highland Council were doing it properly. There is now overwhelming evidence that it hasn't been done properly, and we need to have a much better local understanding and use, and above all trust in the decisions that are being made on our behalf in what is the common good.
You mentioned, and again we've sort of touched on it, the parking charges. They're talking about implementing parking charges in Nairn in various places. As you said, is this just a fundraising exercise, or
if you
how's it going to impact the town?
If you look at it, actually says it's income generation. All the paperwork that comes out, it's not even pretending to be about what's sensible. And to me, fundamentally, what we've now got is a massive amount of evidence that most of the car parking in Nairn is on common good land, and therefore the council cannot raise money from that source. So the answer should be, let's stop this nonsense and think again. And I think there are really good arguments, and you know, the Gurn has been great on this, looking at Angus, where they've really destroyed the Angus towns by bringing in parking charges, and we know people don't like parking charges, and we know there's alternative out of town shopping. So to go back to the whole question of the town centre plan, it was about regenerating the high street, it was about more footfall, it was about more jobs, and these things are incompatible, so we have to decide what is our priority, and that's where the conflict of interest really comes up very clearly to a head.
Because there's certain elements of, we've got it, so you should have it as well.
Yes, and I find it quite funny that when it suits them, they argue fair shares, and then when it doesn't suit them, they don't. And that, you know, we talked about this before, but we've got the community centre, which is an incredibly well-run community centre, with a, you know, a board of directors, very good professional staff, very well run, fantastic facility, and answer is that the House Council gives it no money or very little money, and yet elsewhere when there's badly run community centres, they give them a lot of money, and the more badly it's run, the more money they get. If you look at the sports club, again, non-executive directors, very good professional staff. Same with the council, a vast amount of money that should be being spent on sport and leisure in Nairn, and again, they get no thanks for it, so there's a lot in the background that makes this argument really important from a Nairn point of view.
One of the other areas, again, is NICE. They are basically an umbrella organisation now, which enable other organisations to use their expertise and experience. We've seen that with Team Hamish, which was a charity was set up to fundraise. What other things have NICE been involved in?
Just to expand a wee bit on that, everybody who we've talked to said if we didn't have a social enterprise, a community body with the right to buy, that would be the first thing they would advise us to do. So NICE has still got about 1,000 members, with the Team Hamish membership, which is mainly younger people and families. It's got an enormous potential membership, and everybody I talk to from elsewhere will give their right arm and their right leg to that sort of social enterprise. So what we're trying to do is get a group of experienced directors who are Oscar compliant, who understand the roles and responsibility of being a Scottish charity, and rather than have a series of small charities who all, and we know this from experience, struggle to get non-executive directors, we can offer this service so that we can give people that amount of expertise, but they can be an arm or a leg or a trading arm or a subsidiarity of NICE. And all of that is dependent on this integrated model of the Nairnshire Committee, the community councils, the bid, all the charitable sector and the common good all working together in the best interests of Nairn and Nairnshire. So the model is seen as the right model, and that's the model we're trying to put forward in this place planning, community empowerment, and having a social enterprise and having the right to buy and all these other statutory options open to us is an essential part of moving this model forward.
Because these can also give sources to potential funding as well, can't they?
Yeah, the whole thing is that if you go back to the why I'm so keen on fair share argument, if a community gets its fair share of health and fair share of council spend and chooses to use the options that are open to it under the charitable side and other investments, and also the whole volunteer added value, then it's win-win-win for everybody. It's far and away the best model that I know of how you would want a community to develop.
With regards to the wetlands at Sandown, that's been an ongoing project for a long, long time. Jack Ashford was involved in that, and it's something that's never come to fruition, really. Is that progressing at all?
Yeah, interestingly, NICE are in discussions with the Wetland and Woodlands group over just what we were talking about, a kind of merger. I think it's really important that we try and get rid of some of the myths about wetland. Nairn has potentially got some of the wetlands in Britain, probably in Europe. It's a fantastic tourist potential attraction if we play our cards right. So the Wetlands Centre is really just to draw attention to the fact that we've got this wonderful coastline. We've got a Ramsar site, which is of European significance at Hilton of Wetlands. We've got all the way to Calvin through to the Findhorn Bay. We've got Loch Dew, which is a really complicated bit of wetlands. We've got North Flemington, we go up to Loch Indoor. And all of this could add, to go back to this message that we're trying to get across, is that this is all about year-round tourism. So the waders, the wetlands, the birds are here all winter. And Granton has got a very successful bird tourist industry. We know that Dumfries has got a very successful bird tourist industry through the winter. So it would help our tourist industry if we could extend the season. So the wetlands is a tourist attraction that goes back to the bypass to pull people in. We could have the Wetlands Centre, and that's always been potentially on the Sandown land. It's been approved through numerous local plans, and again it's a project where we need capacity to take these sort of projects forward, and that's all part of what we're trying to achieve. It also ties nicely in with the Trades Park Hall, which again there is discussions between the Trades Park Hall Trust and NICE about how we can join all this money together to make sure that Trades Park gets its hall as part of the wetlands tourist attraction, and that just seems to me to be best and most efficient use of the pockets of money that we have.
And it also ties in with the green sustainability and environmentally friendly projects and things as well.
Yes, and another very exciting project is we're looking at green sustainable in energy source for all our water features along the front. So if you start at Parkdean, the new splash pad, the swimming pool, the golf view, potentially the Newton, but also now intriguingly the hydrotherapy pool, which is coming to the end of its natural life and needs to be replaced, and the whole question of the Lido and Dr. Grigger's Lido and the Lido work. It would make absolute sense if we could have a green sustainable energy source for the water in all these features, and we've now successfully bid to the Davison Trust and been awarded a sum of money which will allow us to take that to the next professional engineer stage about the feasibility of that. So it all ties together with where we're trying to take Nairn as being one of the leading attractive, sustainable places to live and to be on holiday. And all these things make sense in the context of our natural environment.
You touched very, very briefly on place planning. Can you explain what that's all about?
Well, place planning is the updated government policy. There's been some very, very good guidance issued recently, partly written by Nick Wright, who, as I've already said, did the links publicity links project for Highland Council, and this is, I think, very sensible Scottish Government policy, where they've accepted that central planning does not always work, and that the more you can use the local knowledge, this local memory bank, the better it is. And the place planning stuff, Nairn has bid to be the model for Highland, for Scotland, around place planning, which would be an agreed new Nairnshire plan, which we'd all have agreed, and which would be infrastructure first, and it would fit into that green and sustainable model, and it would also, I think, produce an awful lot more jobs, an awful lot more income, and to me it's win-win-win for everybody. So we are very keen that we keep Nairn as the model for place planning.
And that would also include a lot of the things that we've touched on, and potential projects within them, like the town centre planning things as well.
Yeah, what we know is that you need a project way of thinking to deliver these projects. So the more these projects are professionally managed, properly costed and delivered, the better it is for us all. And the benefit And I can't stress this enough, it's not just to Nairn or Nairnshire, it's to Highland Council, it's to the Scottish Government, it's to the UK Government, because the more we can generate tourist revenue, business revenue, jobs, the more money there is circulating, the better it is for us all. And all of this is against this very clear commitment to putting structure first, you know, that we sort out the structural problems. We don't just let things happen, we actually plan and develop properly.
So in many cases the bid is like an early ambassador of that.
Yeah, the bid is an essential part of this. The business people have to play their part. The beauty of place planning, and to go back to the beauty of the fair shares, is that the local people become accountable and responsible for their fair share budget. It then behoves them to really put the work and effort in to make sure that they do get value for money. And certainly of all the work I've done, that to me is the most efficient model. The mixture of statutory money, charitable money and volunteer effort and money just seems to me to make absolute sense.
It seems to have a more it's away from the Highland Council influence or the council officials' influence. It's more a bespoke sort of, as you said, project for each potential project.
Yeah, I think what we can safely say is that traditionally both the Health Board and the Council are centralist organisations, and what we know is that does not work. It's proven not to work. So if you go to this very, very dynamic, locally based system, then the accountability and responsibility and the benefits then all fall to the local people. So the more they put in, the more they get back, the better it is for them. And to me that's the most efficient use and the best way of prioritising what the actual spend should be. So if you take, for example, the City Region bid, which turns out to be just a purely Inverness bid, something like 160 million and 2 roads in Inverness, 40, 50 million in Inverness Council, none of that would be a priority for us. And certainly I'm not sure some of it would be a priority for Inverness. So we need a much better way of making sure that people do feel they are part of the process. And the beauty of all these projects is that as they go through their different phases, different stages, there would be wide they would be widely consulted, and the local people would have their say. So by the time it was delivered, it should all be joined up thinking. And if you go back to for example, the integrated health and social care at the hospital site, it took us years to get to that model, but that's regarded as the right model for health and social care in Scotland going forward. And I think we should be very proud that we've got that model, and also how cost effective that model is. And also the fact that, for example, there's always been a GP on call in Nairn since the hospital opened. And compare that to what's happening in Glasgow, where places the size of Gourock, Port Glasgow don't have a GP on call. Glasgow sometimes hasn't got a GP on call. So, there's wonderful examples in Nairn of the model working well for the benefit of us all. And
it's at times we don't realise that these are actually very successful.
I think one of the things that I find most difficult is that anywhere I talk to the rest of Scotland, we bring in outside people, we talk to the councillors in Highland, officials in Highland. Nairn is seen as a model of good practice, as I've said. The sports club, the community centre, what I'll call the hospital site, are all regarded as models of good practice. And yet we're currently told that we're difficult and we're awkward and we're not doing things properly and we don't know what we're doing. And one or other of these is true, they can't both be true.
Talking about being difficult and not knowing what we're doing, that takes us nicely to the community councils. There's been a lot of controversy over the past 2 years with having to go into abeyance and whatever, and a new community council structure coming in. How are the community councils getting on now?
Well, I'm very impressed with the capacity we've now got. I mean, just to put on record that I cannot believe that River was put into abeyance when they had a vast number of community councillors. And that was quite a contrived exercise in trying to get rid of River. And I think that's backfired very badly. And I think we're now seeing the community councils really starting to function very well. And both River and Western Suburban now seem to me to have the capacity to really do what they're meant to do. And that ties nicely back to the fact that that was a decision by the Scottish Government, that as they moved towards centralisation, they had to move something to balance it. There was bound to be tensions there, and these tensions, I think, have been handled very well in there, and we haven't backed off. And I think we're now seeing the benefit of having all our community councils up and running. And again, that's a massive memory bank and just experience that can be used in the best interests of Nairn and Nairnshire.
Because community councils are not there to make it easy for the Highland Council or the local government in general.
No, if you look back at some of the meetings, and I can remember these meetings where people would come through from Inverness and say the common good was wonderfully well run and there was no problems with it. And here we are, long and really last, after many years and a lot of money being spent, actually producing a common good asset register, and the input from the community council and the community councillors to that has been massive. So it's win-win-win for everybody. And we're not there to say the council is wonderful. If people are doing things incorrectly or not as well as they could, that's our job, is to tell them. And I think it's really important that we all are accountable and responsible in this system for what the outcomes are and the decisions that are made.
One of the things that in 3 years ago that you said was that Scottish Government is encouraging localities to be empowered, and Highland Council is encouraging localities to be empowered as well. Is that happening?
Well, I think the answer is yes, but slowly. And like all these things, turning oil tankers round is really difficult. But I think we're seeing definite signs now, and certainly the discussions I'm having now with senior council officials, and to a certain extent with some of the health board officials, is a very different conversation from what we've had in the past. And again, can we just stress this? If the Scottish Government has decided that this is the right way of travel, it's very difficult to stop that when to most of us it makes absolute sense. And there will be difficulties and there will be tensions, but if we work our way through this, it's much more likely we'll come up with the right solution.
We hear a lot of negative things about Nairn, but you just sort of said things are progressing. It's I know that after going through the last interview from 3 years ago, I did feel a wee bit depressed and downhearted at the seeming lack of progress. But let's be honest, there are some areas where there has been none or even backward steps. Things are not actually as bad as they seemed. There has been progress, and these things take time. And as you said recently, it takes a long time to get good ideas going. Are we progressing?
Yes, and I think the summary is very accurate. I think the questions that the community, the people of Nairn have to ask is, what are the blocks? Why are there blocks? And certainly, if we start having, let's say for example, a public meeting about car parking, people have got to come along and put the genuine interest of Nairn first. I don't think you can have kind of compromise in these areas. A wee bit of car parking and a wee bit of money isn't going to make any difference. What it might do is destroy the high street. And to go back to this whole theme of the future of the bypass, of where we want Nairn to be, being positive, we've got the amateur championship in golf on both our courses next year. That normally would be sung from the highest towers as a wonderful achievement. It's hardly been mentioned at all. We have all these really good things happening, and somehow or other we've got to get rid of some of this negativity and negative people, because At the end of the day, it's easy to be very negative. It gets us nowhere and it doesn't do us any good. So we must get into this way of moving forward, and that's why the place planning and the project manager, project type thinking is the way forward. We deal with these projects, we deliver them, and I think we'll see a massive boost when the Team Hamish work starts. It'll be fantastic when we see what's actually delivered, and I think we'll find a whole lot of people in there willing and able to give that energy and support and knowledge to making other projects work and be delivered. And that to me is a much more positive way forward than this negativity, which quite honestly at times drives us all around the bend.
With community empowerment comes community involvement as well, so people really have to, as you said, stop being negative and start coming on board on things, get involved in things.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it. I mean, you know, if we mention the wetlands, people say, well, it's just a wee puddle of water in the middle of nowhere. It's not. It's a whole system approach to year-round tourism, for example. It's a whole system approach to having a trades park hall and a western approach that's attractive and makes people think, let's go to Nairn. It's the same with the links and the beach and the harbour. All we're trying to do is attract more people to take advantage of this wonderful natural beauty that we've got. And we're not trying to spoil it, we're not trying to do anything negative, we're just trying to make it a much better experience. If you think, for example, of James's ice creams, it's amazing how many people are there having a coffee and ice cream in that environment. Why shouldn't we just make it a bit better?
The paths and cycling routes as well is another area. There's a lot of long distance paths in the country now, but there seems to be a gap from, there's places in Murray, places in the sort of Highland region, Inverness and west and north. But there seems to be a gap here.
Well, as you know, one of the other successes that NICE and the group had is we've reopened or resurfaced the disabled path from the car park at the caravan site out towards Findhorn. And that was a good example of joined up thinking and joined up money. But the point you're making is, again, I've struggled with this and I make no bones about it. I don't know what the block is. To me, the natural link from Findhorn along through Colburn to Nairn, and from Nairn out to Fort George, and then on to Inverness, just seems the sort of links that you would want. And then we have this wonderful hinterland. We've got no particular order: Fort George, Kilrock, Codder, Brodie, Lochendorb. All these should be safe cycle routes, and one of the, to go back to the bypass, one of the reasons that people are twitchy about cycling in Nairn, the big change from when I first came to Nairn, is you could cycle these paths, these roads quite happily. Now we've got people using them as bypasses, as rat runs, and the traffic is dangerous. So we need to address all that. So the way to address that would be to get the bypass built, and then to return these natural roads and paths and cycle tracks to being used as part of this wonderful, rich tapestry of tourist industry that we have.
Which ties in with the green ethos as well.
Absolutely, and you know, people just cannot believe how, you know, environmentally rich we are, and historically rich we are. We've got Culloden on our doorstep, we've got Fort George, we've got all these wonderful castles, and they're real, and the tourists love it. So, you know, to go back to the bed and the marketing, the branding, there's a whole lot of things that are very positive. They're all moving in the right direction, and above all, we're developing the capacity. We're getting people who really know what they're talking about, helping paid professionals to deliver the projects that we want.
So, what's your vision for the next 3 years? Is Nairn still a good place?
Well, Nairn's a lovely place, and it's a very good place. I think if this all goes the way I hope it will, and I can see no reason why it shouldn't, we could be very quickly be accepting that we're the model for place planning. That would take us nicely into a very joined up plan for Nairn and Nairnshire. We'd be working with the bid to develop more jobs and more income, and it all just flows naturally from taking that position as to what Nairn and Nairnshire wants to be, and having the capacity to deliver that. And that means, and we keep saying this, it means it's all working together, and it means it's all speaking with one voice, and I think we'll work very hard to deliver that. I think the people who don't want to do that are increasingly under pressure to justify their position, and if they can't justify it, the answer is that they have to just let the people who do want to work together get on and do it.
So in 3 years' time, when we have our next big chat, let's hope there's been lots of progress.
Well, I certainly think there will be lots of progress, and I think the good news is that we'll see the first blows being stuck in the flash pad at the end of this month, and I think when people go down there and see just how wonderful it is in the summer, it sets a benchmark for what we would like to deliver, and I think we'll just see project after project now being delivered.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.